On today's episode, we are joined by one of my best friends, Bella Mercer. She's someone who went from being completely disconnected to church, to the faith, to a relationship with God, to having a genuine relationship with God, being plugged into community, and truly growing in her faith. We go over her testimony, we go over, kind of like cultural issues as well as far as body image issues from a woman's perspective versus a guy's perspective, how to handle it, how to move forward from it, the mentality of it, the emotions, all that stuff. I would just ask if you're on YouTube right now, if you could subscribe to the channel, it would mean a whole lot and it would help out tremendously with the algorithm. Follow us on Instagram at Bogan Everywhere Podcast. If you're on Spotify, give us a follow, a rating. We would very much appreciate it as well. And same thing for Apple Podcasts. And if this is your first time here on this channel, on this podcast, my name is Guillermo. We talk about faith, finance, and fitness, to the things that life throws at us, with the initiative or the objective to challenge, inspire, and grow. Once again, though, if you're on YouTube, comment down below as well. It helps out tremendously with the algorithm. With that said, I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. Okay, we're on just like that.
Oh, that's crazy.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So, something I want to ask you before we get on to our conversation. So, what is something you'd say to your 15-year-old self?
Oh, okay. I'd say to not worry so much about how you think others perceive you, because at the end of the day, nobody is probably thinking anything about you, and it's wasting your time trying to make yourself please others, because no one's really caring about that. What you should be caring about is yourself and taking care of your mental health, being close to God, being close with your family, valuing what actually matters instead of other people's opinions, I'd say.
That's awesome. Yeah, let's get into that a little bit about God specifically. So, your family is a very biblically based family. I love your family so much, and they're awesome people. And, we've had conversations stuff, and obviously, I wanted to have you on the podcast to talk about one of the many things. But what was your perspective before you started taking your faith serious? Your view on the church, your view on Christianity as a whole, because you were not excluded, but you didn't want anything to do with it. Man, I can't speak. You didn't want anything to do with it, for a while, until there was that revelation, and then the Lord was grabbing a hold of your heart.
Right. I think I was always raised in faith and raised in the church ever since I was born. And for a while, I talk with my sister about this all the time, but we were kind of just fed our religion, fed Christianity, and we didn't really understand it. One, because we were so young, but two, because we didn't really understand how important and impactful it was. We had a great living space. We had a great life. We never had anything happen to us. So we never had to really experience anything that would cause us to need to hold on to something. And I think as kids, that's what you imagine God being like a lifeline, instead of being an everyday kind of relationship. And so as I got older, and in the specific church that I was in, not to bash everybody in that church, but it was very cliquey, especially for the younger kids, a very, I would say, judgmental space. And it caused me to have a lot of resentment towards Christians in general, because I didn't know any other church. I didn't know any other Christians. What I saw in those people is what I imagined in every Christian. And at that point, I was like, no one is showing me Christ here. I don't feel like, if this is what Christianity is, I don't want to be a part of this, because I was, getting bullied. I was getting made fun of. I was seeing things that if you believe in Christianity and you want to follow through with Christ, you wouldn't be doing these things. I'm not going to go into specifics, but you can just imagine teenage kids, what they're going to be up to and rebelling against their parents and all these things. And I just didn't want to be a part of that. And I started getting resentment and almost a hatred. And it was to the point where if something happened to my life, my parents would be like, just lean on God. And at that point, I was just like, I'm tired of hearing about God all the time. God this, God that. I just want to be left alone. Why does it always have to be brought back to that? And at that time, I didn't understand they were just trying to help me. But I just had so much resent and hate in my heart. I wanted nothing to do with it at all, because I didn't want to associate myself with the people I had experienced before. So I think that was my look going leaving, not leaving, but just separating myself from the church, not so much from religion, but more just from the church. I still believed in God and everything. I just didn't want to be so involved because of what had happened to me.
So, do you think that due to the fact of your experience with the church, with the people, with the clickiness and all those things, did it ever cross your mind at the time though to directly go towards the source, that of which is obviously God in this case, where you were like, you're truly trying to seek Him out, or do you think like it was just too big of a deal for you with the experience and stuff to where you're like, what is the point of involving myself towards the Lord? Doesn't I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I definitely think, again, I was younger before I was really mature at all. I kind of associated those people with God. So I was like, I don't really want to go to him if he's just gonna, if these people are praising him and following him like this, like I have want nothing to do with that. So I didn't even want to try at that point. I just wanted to be like my own person, but we all know that's not really possible without God. But at the time, I was just a kid and I was just mad. I was mad at the world. I was mad at my parents. I was mad at myself. So I really was so lost in that anger and like resentment that I didn't really try to think outside of it. And I think that was what held me back for a really long time.
So let's talk a little bit about your involvement and where things shifted, with timelines and everything. When was it for you that you started to go into the church? Because obviously context as well that you and your family are from Kentucky, but you guys live here in Florida now. What was the context in the sense of like your change of faith, your change of view, and also where was the switch at? Because the Bella I'm seeing now and that I know now wasn't the same Bella from like a year ago or so.
Right.
Not that you were like crazy. I just meant like more so like your involvement.
I understand, yeah. I think definitely moving to Florida was a big part of it. It's actually where I had the most struggles in the beginning. It was a really big culture shock. There was a lot of people around with different ideas, different things, and I felt like I was getting like super persuaded and like led in different areas. And then finally, like when I hit college, it was my freshman year, I hadn't been to church in like a long time. And my mom and my sister and my dad were begging me. They're like, please come. Like, it's Easter. Like, at least just come once. And I was like, I was about to say no. And something, I don't know why, my usual self at that time would have said no. But that day, I don't know what it was, probably the Holy Spirit like guiding me. But I was like, you know what, I'll just go. It's Easter. My family wants me to be here. I'll go with them. And I ended up going. And I actually was super nervous and really scared because of the past. And I was afraid I was going to get like condemned by all these people and judged. Like they're going to ask me, oh, like, why haven't you ever showed up? And it was really scary. And then I got to Park Ridge, where we both go now. And Mila always tells me, my sister, how encouraging everyone is there, how welcoming everyone is. And I just really didn't believe it until I went. I met one of our good friends, Stanley, was the first person our age that I met there. And I remember after talking to him, after leaving, like that was the nicest experience I've had with a Christian in a long time. Like that was really nice. I didn't feel any like anxiety or scariness like being there and talking to him. And I was like, that was really encouraging to me. And it made me almost have like a step, move a step forward. And also, I feel like this is a common theme for anybody who's been out of the church and then goes back. The first service was Easter. It hit me so hard with the message. It felt like it was designed for me, like right then and there. So I got so emotional that day, and it sent me into this spiral of thinking like everything I've ever thought was wrong, and I was headed in the wrong direction. I needed to like fix what was going on. And it was so abrupt and so fast that I almost doubted myself for a little bit. But because of like the niceness that I experienced from you and Stanley and everybody at that church, I was able to like push through and just keep giving it a chance. And then I met everyone at RUF, and it just became like a group of people that I felt so comfortable around that I was like, there's no way that every Christian is like this when I know these people and I know these pastors and I'm feeling this feeling of being here. It's like weight lifting off. And I finally feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. So that was definitely the shift for me.
That's awesome. And what about your personal, like, intimate time with God? Like, how has that also shifted to where before I'm sure you didn't read a Bible, but now, you're active in the Word and praying and stuff like what, how's that looked like for you?
It definitely switched as soon as I started going to the Monday nights Bible studies for the college kids in RUF. I saw how like involved everybody is, and they just seemed like so sure of themselves. And yes, I'm coming back to like religion, and I felt like sure that I was excited to be like in the church again, but I didn't have that sureness of like really knowing what this was all about because all the stuff I learned was when I was a kid in Sunday school. I didn't really know anything beyond that. So I heard from you, honestly, you're like one of my like inspirations for that because all you talk about is you're always in the word and everything, and that was really inspiring to me. So I was like, maybe I should start like deliberately, not just like on Sundays, but every day like doing Bible studies for myself or reading for myself. So that's when I started doing that, and I found that I can really back up my own doubts after I've gone through the word and really studied and tried to hear God's message through everything. So it's definitely made me like more secure.
Secure in the word. And do you find yourself to initially, reading throughout front to back, or what does your program look like for you as far as reading the Bible?
Right. So since I am still like new to understanding how to read the Bible, and it can kind of get really overwhelming, as I'm sure a lot of like people first start reading the Bible feel, I have this book that I got in like a Christian section of Barnes and Noble that goes through like a passage or two or three every day, and you read through it, and then you have these questions, and it asks you to really dissect like what you think and what God's trying to tell you. And that really helps me because I'm still kind of insecure on like being overwhelmed on how to do it myself. But usually I do that. But I've seen like for the last few months, I've started trying to like do it on my own and like research like passages for what I'm dealing with in my life and really trying to pick that apart. So I'm like transitioning from using like an aid to like being on my own, which I think is cool.
When people look at the at the concept of Christianity and hypocrites and blah 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 blah, which I do agree there are some, but I think to put it as a generalization, whether it's religion, same thing with like even people with ethnic backgrounds or whatever the case may be. I think a generalization is pretty dangerous because you can't just say that for
Right.
a certain group of people. What is something that you would tell people, next time you encounter someone, same concept, same way that you believed and thought about before? How would you share that with someone and kind of like, talking to them and keeping it real on your experience, but telling them no, that's not the entire concept of Christianity.
Yeah, I'd probably start with that people who are like misleading Christianity or being legalistic or whatever the case may be, I say first that they're probably struggling with something in their own life that causes them to be like this same way like you tell a bully like someone's being a bully because they're dealing with something that they have to push on to others. I feel like that is definitely something that can cause people to have this generalization about Christianity because a certain group of people are dealing with things that they're probably not dealing with correctly, you know what I mean? So I would say to try and understand that first, in the same way that you wouldn't judge a random person on the street and base that random person on every single person who looks or acts like them, has the same occupation as them. You have to bring that with Christianity as well. You can't exclude Christianity from that. And also remember, like, no one's perfect. And that's literally one of the main things about Christianity is like, you are not perfect, Jesus is. So if you're trying to break down Christianity as someone who's feeling like it's a hypocrite type of thing, you can't exclude Christianity from the no, everyone's perfect type of thing.
Yeah.
So I'd say to remind yourself of that
Yeah.
because the same way someone else makes a mistake, these people are making a mistake. And I'm not saying it's okay. Like I'm not pushing like, oh, don't worry about it. Like it's not like yes, they're pushing an idea that's not the best, but again, the same way you're going through something, they're probably going through something too.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, and that's what upsets and annoys the crap out of me is like people who are, put on your church face on Sunday, but let's act completely different, and don't get me wrong, like I've done that before. In high school where it's this concept of like, put on your church face on Sunday and Wednesday nights, but I'm gonna curse, I'm gonna live free, I'm gonna speak to whoever, however I want to. It's just like that's not right, and that's obviously not reflecting, the fruits of the spirit and stuff. And I think when you are generally and genuinely okay with that idea, with that concept, it's really dangerous because then that can like have such a bad rep on Christianity, and then the 5 or 10 or 20 people who you see on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis Now they think, oh, if that's what Christianity is about, I'm either going to want to join and act like that, or I want nothing to do with that at all. And I think like that there's a danger in that has been shown, unfortunately, to where there's the concept of like being comfortable and being like a cultural Christian instead
Right.
of a true what the Bible has to say about it.
I agree. I think that's also a main reason why a lot of young people are leaving the church
Mm-hmm.
nowadays because I think our generation is very aware of how they want to be treated and how
Mm-hmm.
people should be treated, and they're seeing Christianity as this like mean, hateful thing when at the depths of Christianity is Jesus, and he's the most loving, accepting,
Mm-hmm.
like God you could ever have. So I think because of this like face you put on that a lot of young Christians are being, and they want to be worldly, but then they want to be like, godly on
Mm-hmm.
Sunday. So it's hard for people to separate that. So they're like, I just don't want anything to do with it
Yeah.
because what happened to the love all you guys are showing me is hatred, and I think that's this generation is very aware of that. So they either break down that hatred and go to the love, or they're just like, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't even want to try to understand what's wrong with these people
Yeah.
or what they're going through. You're showing me this. I don't want to be a part of it. So I think a way to fix that is definitely trying to work on yourself with God and just trying to be a better you, I
Mm-hmm.
feel.
Yeah. Do you think there's gonna ever come a point where people will actually be able to get it right, or do you think there's always gonna be the slip up?
Well, like it says in the Bible, like there's always going to be people who are, on the opposite end, and there are always going to be people condemning and, not believing, But I think that at the end of the day, you are meant to be with God
Mm-hmm.
or you're not. So I always think there's always like two sides to the coin, and
Yeah.
that's why there's good and evil, heaven and hell type of thing. There's always going to be people who will not agree. They will push your ideas. I was one of those people, so I can say with confidence there will always be someone who will not want to get it right. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Not because they are trying to do it like out of hate, but they just don't believe and they never will, or they've never been taught, or they've never been shown love, and they just can't accept that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there will always just be one side that won't accept, which is sad,
Yeah.
but I think sometimes it's just going to be the reality until the end of days when we're all called up in judgment, and
Yeah.
that's that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about flawness now, or flaw. You know the word, the concept. So, something you are vocal about as well is the idea of like, I guess, owning up to your physical insecurities, and that whole spiel. So, because I want to differentiate the POV from a woman and the POV of a man, right? So what's your what's your context as well of owning up to kind of like your securities and with what you've mentioned before and stuff.
Right. Well, like I said before, I was bullied when I was younger, which is always sad to hear and
Yeah.
think about, but it's very normal, especially nowadays. It's a little too normal, but, we're taking steps to fix that. But especially as a girl, being bullied for your physical appearance is like a shot to the stomach, because I think growing up as a woman, your appearance is everything, especially from not from like a God point of view, but from a worldly point of view. When you're so young, it's so easy to be influenced by the world. Like, what you look like always matters, and if you're not pretty, you're not going to amount to anything. Like,
Mm-hmm.
guys don't want ugly girls. Like, you can't be a good person if you're ugly, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if all people are talking about is how you look and how it's not how they want you to look, you feel like so demeaned. And feeling like that, it's hard to come back from. So you do like whatever you can to fit in or to be pretty or to be the girl that every guy wants, type of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And it just takes your self-esteem down a notch and makes it hard to come back from, for sure.
But do you think that there's a differentiation because of gender, or if it's a person by person case? Because you know I'm not trying to sound like a tough guy or anything, but for me, my view is like, well, for instance, I didn't like how my teeth looked. I got braces,
Same.
and I paid it out of pocket. I did the work that I wanted to do because I want to have straight teeth. I want my teeth to be not perfectly white because that's impossible, but good enough to where it's not colored or anything. So, but that was like an appearance that is within my control. It's not like it's for instance, it's not immoral or unethical to
Right.
straighten your teeth with braces. Obviously, and that's kind of my view. Is like this view of like if I don't like how I look, I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm
Right.
gonna gain weight. I'm gonna build muscle. I'm gonna do whatever, right? So do you think that it's a gender thing to where, as a generalization, some women or most women, it can be like a thing for them of like kind of like insecurity with the whole compliments and how you look sort of thing, or do you think there could also be some males who don't like how they look, and so you can't generalize it, or you can like what's your concept with that?
I think that on both sides there is an expectation on how to look. I'm not a man, so I couldn't tell you what that expectation is.
Mm-hmm.
But from my guy friends, from my own boyfriend, from my dad, you know, it's easy to swipe men's feelings under the rug with like how they're perceived in the world. But because of that, I think the way women are perceived is so much enhanced. Not saying it's better or worse than how a man should feel, but because people tend to sweep men's feelings under the rug, it heightens this fact that women need to be like the pretty girl type of thing. And I think it can definitely be personal as well because you can grow up being very secure in yourself, but still have things you want to fix about yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. Like my thing is I want to be more athletic, so I'll go out and I'll run, or I want to have like take better care of my hair, but it's not because I feel ugly, it's because I want to take care of myself. But when I was younger, it was a thing of other people are telling me as a woman I'm ugly because I don't look like this supermodel or this person or this person. But again, on the other side, there are men who definitely feel insecure about themselves because girls are like, well, I don't like how you look like this, or you should look like this actor, or whatever. So I think on both sides, it's definitely easy to generalize, but also it can come down to the person. But for me specifically as a woman, I think there was, not for me personally anymore, but there was a standard that I felt like I had to uphold because if I didn't, I would be told by the rest of the world and even other women, like, you're not pretty enough, therefore you're not good enough, therefore you won't amount to anything, blah, blah, blah. So,
But like, don't you think that if you know who you are, right, and you are content with how you should look, don't you think it could be easier to block off the noise from other people?
definitely. I think,
Because it's you, because you know how you were raised, you know how you look, and you know what's within your control. Like, not you specifically in this case, but like, oh, if I'm a person who doesn't like how my acne looks, oh, let me find treatment, let me find the right creams and the products or whatever to be able to fix that or
right, but
whatever.
it's not for others type of thing, is what you're saying?
Um, I'm just saying for like a concept of like, if that's how someone feels, shouldn't they just block off the noise and be like, hey, I don't like how I look, so I'm gonna change. You know,
Right.
you know what I mean?
I think, yes, if you are secure in yourself, that's definitely possible. That's how I feel now.
Mm-hmm.
But if you did grow up being like bullied or yourself like I don't know, admirance was pushed down and you have a lot of self-hatred, it's hard to be a stronger person as you grow up and you have to learn those lessons for yourself as you mature. It all comes with maturity at the end of the day. The older you get, the less you care about other people and you just do things for yourself.
Yeah.
But as a kid, as a teenager especially, all you're hearing is other people and you've already been broken down so much. Unless you take steps to fix yourself, you're going to continue to do things for other people instead of yourself. So I think, yes, you can do things for yourself, but that's after you rebuild your mental state of how you see yourself,
Mm-hmm.
I guess. And that comes with maturity for sure.
Gotcha. And so I guess like, with the whole body image thing, right? With women specifically, because I really don't know if it's like a man thing of like body positivity or whatever. Where do you stand with that? Like, what's your view on all that
Like
stuff?
like body positivity, like the whole movement type of thing.
Yeah, I guess like for instance, if a person is clearly obese to where they know, hey, brother or sister, like, you're not going to make it for the next year, if you know, like, clearly they need to lose weight, in this case, as an example, shouldn't it be the right thing to do to speak up on a person that you know is having an issue with that? Or, because otherwise, the way, with the woke culture going on right now, it's like, oh, are you discriminating me? Do you not like how I look? You know what I mean?
Right. And I think if someone is in that state, like an obesity state, I have a lot of people I know in my family who are going through that. And it's easy to feel defensive when you know you don't look like everybody else. And they're probably, again, like I said, insecure from their childhood and all of this stuff that people are just being purely hatred. They're not trying to help. There are people who purely just want to put you down to make themselves feel better. So they probably are super defensive, and that's the whole reason the woke culture is how it is. But I'd say if someone is struggling with obesity or anorexia or any type of body image thing, but it's more like a health issue, it's definitely important to like hone in on that and be like respectful first, because again, they probably are very defensive because other people who don't care about them are just attacking them purely to attack. So if you really care about that person, be like, hey, I see you're dealing with this. I'm not trying to say I hate how you look. What I feel about how you look has nothing to do with how you feel about you look and how God sees you. I'm here because I see a health risk, or I'm trying to be helpful. I'm not trying to say I hate how you look. I don't really care how you look. It doesn't matter to me how you look. It shouldn't really be about how you look, it's how you feel
Yeah.
and your health. So I think if you're coming at it with that attitude, it's a good thing to do, especially if you're close to that person, you want to help this person. And maybe they're just feeling insecure and they're putting it away. They don't want to deal with it because they know people are saying these things about them, or they know that they're unhealthy, but they don't want to face the issue. So going about it in an encouraging light and trying to be helpful about their health, not so much about, hey, you look fat, or hey, you look too skinny. No, hey, you seem like you're struggling with your health. Hey, maybe like we can go talk to someone. Are you dealing with something that's causing you to be like this? We can help you. Not so much like, oh, go to the gym, lose a couple pounds, you're looking like fat. You know what I mean? I feel like there's definitely a reason why people can be defensive, but that's because of the way that people go about it. Maybe you are trying to really help someone, but you don't really know how to talk to that person and something slips out the wrong way. That's when communication is very, very important in these types of situations, because either parties, like the other side could be like, you're trying to hate me and you're trying to put me down, and it could just be a communication issue. Like, no, I'm not trying to do that, I'm just trying to help. But you can't really know that unless people stop getting so much in their heads and just trying to have a clear conversation without being super defensive.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, isn't it like, I think it's clear, and I think it's a common sense thing, in my opinion, like, the concept of, if you're overweight, in this case as an example, go to the gym, or like run or whatever, and eat less. It's as simple as that, with the exception, like we or you spoke about earlier, of there being like a health thing. If that's the case, then obviously I understand. But shouldn't it be like, isn't it easy to just go work out and not eat less? Like, it's a discipline thing, you know what I mean?
It definitely is a discipline thing, and I think the problem with these types of people who are dealing with that is that they don't have discipline in their life and they've never been taught it, and that's the reason they've ended up like that. And when I mean health, I mean like being obese, or like not like an issue causing them to gain weight, but purely just because they gain weight now they have a health issue.
Yeah.
But I think how you said discipline is very important, and people who have never been taught discipline don't know how to go about it, especially on their own. So sometimes it can be really easy. Somebody can go and be like, I'm not healthy. This is not okay. I'm gonna go to the gym, or I'm gonna eat more, or I'm gonna, talk to a doctor. I'm gonna get a trainer, whatever. But some people, I feel like, not purposefully, but I feel like it can be overwhelming, and they've never been taught how to deal with that, and so they just continue. They're like, well, people are telling me it's fine, so I'm just going to keep being like this. And they don't want to face the fact that, like, hey, you should probably try and better yourself.
What about the women who aren't in that scale of like obesity or whatever, but they still see themselves as like, oh my gosh, I have to lose weight or whatever. I look so bad, but other people are like, well, you don't. You look fine. You look good. You don't. You're not. It's not a big deal. Because I think that's, and like I said, I'm not trying to sound sexist, but like I think it's a lot easier for a woman to kind of like, she might think she's like a pound over, and it's like a big deal to her.
Right.
And it's like, dude, like, versus a guy, from a guy's view, at least for me, it's like, oh, like, I need to cut down, or oh, I need to gain more weight or whatever. It's like, oh, I'm
Right.
gonna work towards it.
Not that big of a deal type of
Yeah.
thing. I think that's because we know that women are definitely more emotional
Hmm.
and take things more to the heart and more sentimental. And as far as I know, guys are just like, you know what? Brush off my shoulder. Like, I got this. Next thing I do, I'll do this thing to fix it type of
Yeah.
thing. They don't like really dwell on it too much.
Hmm.
So I think that, especially, I've been there thinking like I need to lose weight, and I know I don't. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And a lot of girls have this body dysmorphia thing where they see themselves against the comparison thing, comparing yourselves to idols who are definitely starving themselves, to people who are out here on social media, like fake posting, editing themselves, and you're sitting here like, I don't look like that. I need to look like that.
Yeah.
And you look at yourself in the mirror like, I'm so fat. I have this here and this here. I need to tone myself down
Yeah.
when you look beautiful. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I think that's definitely a mental health issue. It stems from that anorexia and body dysmorphia and all that. It's really easy to pick yourself apart and dwell on it for so long
Hmm.
because of what you see everywhere. Like, I just recently told you, like, I'm deleting my social media because I'm tired of seeing all this fake stuff
Hmm.
everywhere that I feel like I need to be, when in reality, I'm perfect the way I am, you
Yeah.
know? So I think that's definitely easy for women to feel, for sure.
Do you think social media can heavily affect how a woman views, I guess, either herself physically, or also like the concept of, oh, I want to be with a man. I'm happier with a man. Um, I want a good looking guy, or someone who makes money. Or do you think social media can affect a woman a lot more than a man? Because like I said, like for instance, when I look on social media and the people I follow or the people I know, oh dang, they have a nice car. Oh dang, they have a nice house. Oh, they took a great trip. My view is like, instead of, man, I wish that was me, or oh man, that sucks that that's not me. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, it would be nice to have that, but it's not the end of the world. But moving forward, I'm like, all right, how do I get there? Like how, what business ventures do I have to endure to do that? How much money am I gonna have to save up? Whatever. Do you think that it's a lot more challenging for a woman to view things on social media, given
Oh,
given the context in this case, because of what you said, you deleting social media and stuff.
definitely. It is very easy to get sucked into thinking about what you need to have, what you need to be, and it's not so much about as for myself, it's not so much about like what steps do I need to take to have a man like that in my life or to look like this. It's like, why don't I look like this? Why don't I have that? And then hating yourself for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much of like an uplifting thing, like you're thinking about making you feel like you have goals to reach. It's more like feeling like we're falling behind and we'll never catch up. So I think that's honestly a person to person mindset that you need to switch and discover for yourself. That's the reason I deleted social media, so I
Mm-hmm.
can discover my strength in myself and in God and everything, not what I see or what I want to be. So definitely for women, it's easy to feel like you're lacking instead of what could I be gaining, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Well, I mean, as a woman, then what are some ways as well that for anyone listening, they can build up their security, um, in a sense of like their physical appearance, their mental state, and as well as like, I guess, with goals and desires, and not comparing themselves. Because there's that quote, comparison is the thief of all joy. And I think when you are looking at other people's perspectives who look like they're better than you, it can come off as like something dangerous, and sometimes people are just like, oh, why not me, right? So I guess like for me, and before I repeat the question, for me it's like, all right, I am fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. Psalms talks about it, and so that's enough for me. And I know not everyone looks at faith based point of view, but that enough is for me, knowing that I was made and crafted and molded the way that God wanted me to. If He wanted me to be taller, He would have made me taller. If He wanted me with a smaller or a bigger nose, He would have made me with a smaller or bigger nose. If He wanted me to be a specific skin color, He would have made me that specific skin color. But I am content because I know I have the foundation of the fact that God made me exactly how He wanted me to be. And so, like, what for you, not for you specifically, but like for the people listening, how can someone build that sense of security as well?
I think, firstly, that because you have such a strong faith foundation, it's easy for you to feel like that. And I feel like since this is such a worldly problem, especially for women, they're forgetting about the fact of faith. And they don't have that. And that's the main reason they're struggling, because they don't have that security in God. I'm like, I'm beautiful. God made me the way I am. There's nothing wrong with me. A lot of these women, like, they forget about that, or they don't have it at all. So that's probably the first step I would take, is to dive into the Word and really be with God and let Him show you how beautiful He thinks you are, and read that scripture, and just remind yourself of it every day. If you ever feel a doubt coming, be like, this is how I am, this is who I am, God made me this way, and I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to love myself. Not saying you're just going to stop working on yourself,
Yeah.
but the things you can't change are the things that make you beautiful. So I think that's definitely a thing, especially for women, to remember. And there's a lot of great women in the Bible who can show how beautiful and wonderfully they were made by God. And I think looking after those specific people in the Bible can definitely help. And then another thing is just forgetting about, like, what other people are saying, and just take a break, like I did. I took a break, and I'm going to focus on why I love myself, what I feel like is good about me, and hone in on those things. Also, like, for example, I'm in the STEM field in school, and I have a lot of smart people around me all the time. And one of my biggest insecurities is like, I'm not as smart as these people. Everyone thinks I'm smart, but compared to them, I'm not. Like, everyone's doing more than me, they're doing better than me, blah, 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 blah. And this break, I really had time, since I haven't been around anybody, to think back at everything that I've done leading me here. Like, I've passed those classes, I've done that project, I've done this, I've been doing this, I'm about to do crazy research. Like, you have to find things about yourself to be proud of instead of just hating all the time on yourself. And if you can keep finding those, like, uplifting reasons along with following God and seeing why you're beautifully made by Him, I feel like it'll be a lot easier to separate yourself from that, like, need and desire to be someone else and just be a better you, or just be yourself.
Well, Bella, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the conversation sincerely. I know you're on a break for social media or whatever, but for anyone who wants to follow you or check you out, do you want to plug your stuff out there or no?
Sure. My Instagram, when I re-download it, is Bella Mercer _. So yeah, you can follow me there. When I re-download it, I'll accept your request.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Seriously. Appreciate you.